What's up, all you hooligans out there? It's Sunday night, and that means I got Peg Leg with me today. That is Mike Ball. Sometimes he finds it hard if it's usually his leg or it's his pecker. I don't know, man. He has trouble finding that stuff. I heard that stuff when it gets cut off. But anyway, I'm in one of them moods today. Just got home from work and stuff like that. I am going to smoke a big one tonight, man. All freaking in pain and stuff. We got China Doll in the side room. We got Steve and all the boys. We got the Madhouse crew coming on board right now. We got a special guest today, a very special guest. He is one of America's heroes, and he lost a limb in Afghanistan. He is with the Combat Vets Motorcycle Association. I am a huge supporter of the Combat Vets, and I'm sure everybody else out there is. Man, what they do for our country, what they do. But anyway, let's bring in Mikey Ball and screw with him for a couple of minutes. You know what? I like screwing with Mikey. He's fun to screw with. What's up, Mike?
What's going on, everybody? So I'm not the only peg leg here today, guys. And
You're not
also,
you know
so
what?
hold on.
I got to get you one of them freaking pirate hooks, dude. I think that'd be funny.
You know, last Halloween, I did dress up as a pirate. I did legitimately do it.
Can you like special order a stump with a leg like that?
No, you have to make it yourself. You know, I have a couple of amputee friends that have made them out of like broomsticks and stuff. You know, it's hilarious.
And you got to do it for me.
No, it's hilarious. But you did get one thing wrong about our special guest, Carbon. He actually is not just missing one limb. He's actually missing both of his limbs. He's missing.
You know what? I wish you would tell me this stuff so I had to stop eating crow on my own.
No, I got you. Don't worry. I'm keeping you on your toes. But so he's got one that's below the left, below the knee, and one above the knee. And
here I am throwing all kinds of amputee jokes, man. What the hell?
Hey, look! Hey, see, look what happens when you step into a subculture you have no knowledge about. Look at this.
I'm telling you, man, it's like midgets. Okay,
this is oftentimes when we learn the most. We learn the most when we step outside of our comfort zone, right?
You know what? I was thinking about you. I think I was actually thinking about you the other day, and it's because I seen a poster there. I guess they're having midget wrestling over here. And I wonder if you would qualify if I took your legs off.
Maybe, but the thing is I still have my other legs. So will they measure that side, or do they compensate somehow? Because
well,
I don't know how that works.
They might have to compensate, because I hear down in your package, man, ain't that
okay. Is that the rumors you're hearing?
That's the rumors, man.
That's crazy that you know more about me through side comments than I know about myself. That's wild.
No, don't get upset just because what you got down there ain't above average. Ain't my problem.
Yeah, right.
So how did you find our guest today? We got Carbon from the Combat Vets Motorcycle Association coming on. Again, I love them guys. You know what? They know how to party.
I'm sure they do, man.
They know how to party, man.
And to answer your question, how I, originally found all these individuals is I got, like I told in the very beginning when we got linked up with the Combat Vets originally with, I'm trying to remember her name, Flex. She's the one that like put everything into a line,
that's my girlfriend right there.
That's your girl.
There.
Yeah, so then all of a sudden, with talking behind the scenes and setting up all of these different shows, you're talking to all these different individuals, whether they be from the club or they were from the club or retired, or whoever you're talking to. You could be a public relations officer. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes to make a show like this happen. It doesn't just happen.
It does. You kick butt, man.
I appreciate it.
I do have a bitch about you, though.
What is it?
I do have a bitch. You're getting all these guests on, and I don't see any big tits on them. Okay, There's no big titties.
Well,
what the hell's wrong with you?
I can only do my
one
best.
with big titties.
I'm
You know,
trying my best.
that's what happens when you send somebody with one leg out to go find guests.
Damn, you need 2 legs, huh? Well, why don't you tell that to Carbon here? How about that? How about you tell that to him? We'll bring him in.
What's up, Carbon? How you doing? Mike brought you in because he's getting picked on right now. So
Oh, that's why I brought him in.
I better bring that guest on.
Yeah, we gotta stick out for each other. I got you.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, man, get it, stick up for each other.
we gotta lean on each other. Nobody else can.
There
That's
you go.
right.
So, Chris, let's hear about the Combat Vets Motorcycle Association first. Then we'll get into your personal story.
Sounds good.
Well,
what do you want to know?
It's like dead silence.
Yeah, he's like, what?
That's like
Yeah.
So
what brought you to the Combat Vets Association?
Right.
Man?
Well, I joined about a couple years ago. I had just moved back from California, living now by St. Louis, and I've been in the motorcycle scene for a while now. I rode with a bunch of guys out there, and out here, I was kind of just happy being on my own. And my dad lives out here, and he's also a combat vet. He's like, "Hey, I'm gonna check out these guys. If you want to join me, cool. If not, I was like, oh, I'll give them a try and see what they're about." And I went to one meeting, and I mean, here I am 2 years later.
Rock on, man. Now, did the Combat Vets, did it draw you in because they're all veterans?
Yeah. So, I mean, it was one of those things where, we got people from all walks of life, but, there's a saying that we had when we were in, and it's like, war is kind of the great equalizer. There's no rich, poor, when it's your buddies next to you, you all bleed the same color red. So when you have that same mentality, even when you get out, if you're not in a war zone or not in a highly kinetic place, you still kind of gravitate towards people who understand what it was like to be in that situation.
Rock on, man. And is the Combat Vets, that's all combat vets that were serving overseas?
Yeah. So I watched the Rain Man interview, and he went over it pretty well about, how there's kind of like certain tiers or groups. So combat vets, a full member is a veteran who served in a combat role or has seen combat to some extent. And then we have our supporters, which are veterans, but they haven't deployed to a combat zone. And then our auxiliary, which are spouses, or widows or widowers. What
got you into motorcycling?
Fascinated with anything 2 wheels. I mean, since I was a kid, the first thing I learned how to ride was a bike. I did BMX and all that stuff. Didn't really get into skateboarding. As soon as I could get on a dirt bike, I was on a dirt bike. I actually got grounded for like a whole year because I was ripping around the middle school behind our house. Got caught. I thought I got away with it, and then one of my neighbors ratted me out. So
I thought it was going to be the police or something that did it.
No, man, I got away.
Freaking neighbor.
Yeah, it was a neighbor. Yeah. And then as soon as I could get a license, man, I was on the street. So
rock on, man. Moving forward, how was your high school years? And that I'll lead up into you wanting to go into the service.
Yeah, I mean, high school, I was kind of, I don't know, an average student. I didn't really excel. I wouldn't call myself, barely succeeding, but I just didn't have any motivation to further my education. I did enough to get by, and I don't know. I knew I wasn't ready for college. Both my parents were military, so I knew that that was probably the route I was going to take. They were both Air Force. I didn't really see myself as as being on a plane or fixing planes like they were. I wanted to kind of do something that when I got out, I was like, I did something badass. Something that nobody in the civilian world really can get to do. And
okay,
I don't know. I just saw the Marine.
Is it the truth that the Air Force is a bunch of pampered people?
Oh no!
Oh man, I can't talk bad about the Air Force without at least somebody from the Air Force being here to defend themselves. But I will say this: all right, there's a running thing that says the Air Force is more like a business, and the Marine Corps is more like a cult. And if that can kind of give you the mentality behind the two, that's a good
So
representation.
basically, what you're saying is the Air Force people, they wouldn't be able to hump a pack about 10 miles.
Maybe some of them. Hey, the PJs, the ones that go in like get down pilots, I wouldn't mess with them. They'd kick my ass 10 times over.
So you said you were a Marine.
Yeah.
You were a Marine. That is awesome right there.
Hell yeah.
How did your parents take it, you going to the Marines instead of the Air Force?
Well, my mom was always, the supportive one. So she's like, even if it scared her, she's like, if that's what you want to do, it's your life to live. Dad was a little bit more resistant, but I think after he saw me when I graduated boot camp and everything like that, he was real proud. So
that's awesome
so.
right there.
Yeah.
Is it what did your parents do in the Air Force?
So they were both aircraft mechanics and flight maintenance mechanics. So they worked on, the various planes that they've got, 130s, C-17s, any of that stuff.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, they're badass in the air.
Oh,
I can that way. What is that? The AC-130 or something gunship?
Yeah, man. I got to see one of those live in action when I was over in Afghanistan, and you do not want to be on the receiving end of that. I can tell you that.
I was about to say,
certain.
Are you feeling the whole ground shake when that is impacting? I mean, that's got to be absolutely insane to be around.
Well, you can definitely hear it. I mean, depending on how close you are, but they usually, they're not bringing those in if you're, danger close or anything like that. That's usually like, hey, let's clear the area before you go in, kind of
Everyone's
stuff.
moving out.
Yeah.
Yep.
What about the A-10 Warthog? Ain't that the ground troops' favorite plane?
Oh yeah, just hearing that thing go off, that little Gatlin, and I forgot what it's called off the top of my head, but yeah, that one's a pretty cool one too. It's that one, the Cobras, the Hilo, the Cobras, and then the AC-130s. Man, those things. I don't know how much I'm allowed to say, but it gives you a little excitement down under, if you know what I'm saying.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Mm-hmm. It might help get Mike something up, but
it does. Weaponry.
Anyway, you after high school, you went into the service. How was boot camp for you?
I mean, boot camp, it's, I would argue to say that the Marine Corps is probably the toughest one out of them, but I don't know. Once you kind of just figure out how to not get, your ass drilled into the dirt, it's pretty easy to kind of figure out your stuff. And as time goes on and you know more and more of your stuff, they don't mess with you as much.
While you were going through boot camp, did you ever have the second thoughts or homesickness?
Oh yeah. I mean, it was one of those things where you're like, okay, the first week you're like, what did I do? But once you kind of get into the groove of things, it's just, you're moving on to that next step. Like, okay, let's get through this phase. Okay, let's graduate. Let's get to your unit and all that stuff. You don't have time to sit down and think after a while.
Right. So in boot camp, did you decide what you were going to do in the Marine Corps?
Oh, yeah.
Did you already know when you went?
Oh, no, I knew before. Yeah, I made my recruiter guarantee that I was going to be infantry.
Oh, wow. So he was well aware, not only well aware, but you like guaranteed it. You're like, this is where I want to be.
Yeah. I knew, like I said, I knew going in what I wanted to do something that, the average, you can't find in the average civilian. Now, in hindsight, that didn't set me up for very many marketable skills coming out. But, at least I got to do some cool things while I was in.
Did you choose infantry because of the legacy of the infantry within the Marine Corps or the Army?
Yeah, I mean, I chose. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I knew I wanted to be infantry, and I had always heard, Marine Corps is the best of the best, and the brotherhood. I think the brotherhood's really kind of sucked me in that thought of like, hey, the guys to your left and right, even if you guys hate each other on the weekends, they're going to be there for you when shit hits the fan.
Right.
So that brotherhood right there is something a lot of people don't know. When somebody gets out of the service, they want to continue that, correct?
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. It's tough to replace that.
And that's why a lot of vets you see joining clubs, associations. And is that one of the main reasons?
Yeah. If you go back to, World War II and stuff like that, when a lot of these clubs were forming and everything like that. It was just guys who didn't feel like they fit in with normal society, and they found their brotherhood with each other. And I think that kind of still rings true today.
Rock on. Now, going after boot camp, you go to a your, what is it, A school or something like that?
Yeah. So for the infantry, it's what is it? ITB, Infantry Training Battalion. If you're outside of the infantry, then you go to MCT, which is Marine Corps Training, like an abbreviated version of ITB, and then they'll go to their A school, whatever it may be.
Wow.
Now, were you out in, did you go to boot camp in Paris Island or San Diego?
San Diego. Yep.
Pendleton?
Yeah, well, they have the MCRT down in San Diego, and then Pendleton is usually one of the places. I got stationed in 29 Palms, which is right by Palm Springs.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like 45 minutes from there, but out in the desert, so that was real fun.
What year did you go in?
2009.
2009.
Yeah.
So what did you feel like, especially with your parents being in the Air Force, when 9/11 happened? And did that lead you into joining the Corps?
I was pretty young. I think I was like in 3rd or 4th grade whenever 9/11 happened, but I do remember seeing it on the TV. And I remember how my parents reacted to it and kind of the sense of pride that they had, especially after the fact, knowing that they were helping the cause, helping defend the country. And like I said, I always knew part of me was going to be in the infantry or in the military. Even as a young kid, 9/11 definitely helped push that, but it could have been a big reason why I decided to join the infantry. And to be honest, in 2009, I thought that the war was going to be pretty much over, so I was actually surprised when I deployed.
Wow.
Was it a surprise for you how long it actually did last?
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, the fact that it lasted as long as it did is kind of surprising, and for better or for worse, it I don't know, it just lasted as long as it did, and only I don't know.
Well,
in hindsight, maybe you can figure out.
I'm very interested in hearing, because with the Vietnam vets, you talk to them guys and they weren't allowed to fight against an enemy that they know they could beat. Is that the same way you guys felt in Afghanistan?
Yeah, in a ways. When I went over there, it wasn't about winning the battle so much as it was winning hearts and minds. But you could only do that to a certain extent when you've been in somebody's backyard for almost 2 decades. For where I was at, it had only been 10 years, almost 10 years at that point. But
still a long time.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, people, they're not looking for you to win them over. They just want you gone.
Do you think that philosophy of winning hearts and minds is something that actually is a winnable thing, where history tells us with Afghanistan, they've been fighting for thousands of years and it's in their blood? They beat the Soviet Union in the 80s, and it seems like they really took it to us as well. So do you believe the hearts and minds deal actually works on people like that?
Well, for some of them, yeah. I would say, for a lot of the people there, I think we did some good, and I like to think that our presence there did, especially looking back to whenever we pulled out and where it's at now compared to when we were there. It's, some people were mad we were there, but I think at the end of the day, we did win over a lot of people. A lot of people wanted to come back here as we were pulling out, and I think that there's a reason for that. Because we made their lives better, and that we knew that as soon as we were gone, it was going to go back to what it was.
So you went through infantry school. What were you attached to? What battalion, regiment? So everybody gets to know that.
Yeah, I was with 1st Battalion, 7th Marines, Charlie Company, or as we're better known, Suicide Charlie. And yeah, like I said, we were stationed out in 29 Palms.
Okay. When did you learn that you were going to go overseas?
So we had just gotten back from our first deployment, which was on a MEU, or a Marine Expeditionary Unit, basically sailing around, training with different either guards or armies from different countries. And we knew right away that pretty much like within a couple months of coming back from that our next deployment was going to be to Afghanistan. Yes.
And when you went over there, what was the first thing that hit you? I would have to say the heat, but
yeah. Well, I went over there February, either late February or early March. I can't remember. So, it was still pretty cool. It wasn't until, right around the time that I got injured that it was starting to get up into the 120s and everything like that. But I honestly, yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, and that was, that was June, July timeframe. But I mean, I honestly remember looking back and where we landed, you could kind of see mountains off in the distance, but I mean, it looked a lot like where I was at stateside in 29 Palms. It's all that desert and just kind of nothingness.
What did you feel when you got there? Was it nervousness? Was it anticipation?
Yeah, both, to be honest. Yeah, it's the nervousness of not knowing what you're going into, but the anticipation of knowing, like, you've been training for years for this moment. You're these next however many months you're here. That's what every second of training, every sleepless night, every time that you've had to sleep in a ditch during training, it was all leading up to this moment so you can be prepared.
China Down wants to know, could you explain what the Combat Vets patch symbolizes?
Yeah, so the Combat Vets patch, we have the black, the red, and the gold. So, the black is for those that we've lost, are like the prisoners of prisoner of war, missing in action, stuff like that. Ace of Spade is also a symbol of that. The military gold is essentially the unifying color of every branch in the military, and then the red and the red is the blood that has been shed on the battlefield, and then actually the skull is the death that war leaves in its wake. So,
right,
yeah. So it all kind of comes together just to kind of serve, symbolize what going to combat represents.
In 2009, what was the general mood of our soldiers over there?
Still pretty motivated. We were going there thinking that we were, trying to still make a difference, and that, everything that we were doing was gonna ultimately end in a positive influence for Afghanistan. So,
yeah. When did you think did the morale ever go down as the years progressed with our soldiers?
It's tough to say. I would say there got to a point where people were ready for it to be over. And I'm not going to get into how it ended. People can have their opinions about that. But it's one of those things when you're still losing guys, and I will say we as a group of warfighters, we were fortunate that we did not lose as many people like we did in Vietnam and World War II and stuff like that. But every life lost, and every person injured, and every person who's committed suicide because of going over there, that's
we're going to be talking about that as well later on. Did you feel supported while you were over there?
Yeah. I mean, I had close friends and family and send care packages and everything like that. But especially when you're over there, you can't even. I try not to focus about being back home. It's all about just being with your boys and getting your job done.
Well, I'm talking about the government as far as equipment that was needed, letting you guys do what you were trained to do.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where especially where we were at, it could be resupplies could be easy, resupplies could be harder than normal. So, they want to try to do the best they can. And especially being a Marine, we always say, we're used to being undersupplied and over prepared. So you make do with what you got.
Now, I'm not going to go into the specifics of where you were or what battles you were in, because that's your personal stuff, and I don't want to broadcast that to everywhere. But getting to the base when you landed, what was your daily routine?
Yeah, our daily routine, I mean, it was one of those things where, I would say on a typical day, you'd wake up, you go shit, shower, shave, do all that stuff. And then typically for us, we would do kind of a day patrol. We would brief for our day patrol. We'd go out, kind of go around wherever our AO was, where we were going to be at the time. And then we'd come back, debrief. A few hours later, we'd brief again to go out at night in a different part that we had kind of satellited around, because it's always easier to kind of get a visual of what you're doing during the daytime. And then at night, you can kind of set up, and, that's at night was when we're trying to catch people planting IEDs and all that stuff. So, I mean,
I can only imagine the technology you guys are using probably too probably insane.
Yeah. I mean, things that, some of it's, I don't know if it'd be considered basic, but, like classic NVGs and stuff like that. But we also had thermals. I carried it's called a Thor, but it's essentially a jammer pack to keep people from, utilizing cell phones or garage door openers to detonate IEDs. So, and then, you got to think about our comms too. You don't want just anybody with a walkie-talkie being able to listen in. So the encryption behind that and everything like that. So yeah, I mean, it's advanced way more than, I could be prepared to talk to you about.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you had the incident that happened to you, and it was I bet a life-changing event. You come home, how were you received?
I was received pretty great. As you could probably imagine, I was pretty drugged up. I mean, they got me from Afghanistan to Balboa and San Diego within a week. So I really didn't have much time to recover. I was still very much under heavy medication, still going through surgeries, but I mean, it was generally positive. There's only a couple of times that I can think of where someone might have said something that they didn't think I could hear, where I'm just like, okay, like, why do you care?
How was it different for you compared to what a Vietnam soldier had to deal with?
Oh, I could imagine that it was probably night and day. Just, talking to a bunch of Vietnam vets and just what they had to deal with. I would say every organization or every supportive group that I've ever experienced has had a Vietnam vet in the forefront who's been leading the charge, because they are bound and determined to not have future warfighters come home in the same state that they had to come home to. And it really shows. It really shows the work that they put into it.
So you're back in the States. Let's talk about your recovery. How did you come to terms about what happened and what you were missing?
Oh man, that's actually a good question. It's kind of weird. So, when I got injured and I lost my legs, and I was awake for the whole thing. And I don't mind going into that night if you want me
Absolutely.
to. Yeah.
Please.
Okay. So I'll start from back there. So like I said, at that time we were doing night patrols, and it was one of those nights where, maybe in hindsight, I'm like, okay, things were kind of off, but we just kind of felt it. We weren't able to go during the day. And so we were already kind of on edge. We didn't really know this part of the AO very well, but we had a job to do. So we went out there, we set up an observation post, which is essentially like we set up like a security, and we're just kind of keeping an eye on what's going on. And as we're getting ready to break this down to head back, one of my guys in the squad, he stepped on the first IED. As soon as that happens, every team in the squad has a job. So my team's job was to set up a landing zone. And so we're setting up this landing zone, and I'm waiting towards the entrance of it for the first aid team, the trauma team, to finish helping out my buddy. And my friend TJ, he's like, hey, we need another body over here to help. So I go run over there. And he's kind of, as we're walking back there, he's kind of letting me know what happened. And Brad, the guy that stepped on the ID, he's got the exact same injuries I do. He was missing both of his legs. Our corpsman, the guy that's, the medical specialist in our squad, he's down there working on him and everything like that. And so we're getting ready to pull him onto a litter. So we lay out this litter, and I step on top of the litter to get ready to pull him in. And as I do, that's when I step on the second one. And like I said, I was awake for the whole thing, so I remember getting tossed in the air. It felt like I was doing cartwheels, but I probably only flipped like once or twice. I landed back in the crater. I do remember I kind of got knocked out, not knocked out, but like I said, that Thor, the thing on my back, it's like 30, 40 pounds. So when that come crashing out of my head, like it kind of dazed me a little bit. I kind of came to, and I'm like, okay, obviously I stepped on a bomb. I need to get myself out of here. So I kind of dig myself out. I take like that first deep breath. I look up, I see the stars. I'm like, okay, I can breathe. That's a good thing. And I look down because it kind of just felt like I don't know. My legs still felt like they were there. It's kind of like if you've ever been in an accident, whether it's on a bike or a motorcycle, and it's like you don't realize how messed up you are until you look down. You're like, oh, I'm messed up, you know?
Yep.
So I look down. I'm like, oh, I'm messed up. And we're, you know, by that time I'm pulling out tourniquets to start getting myself kind of trying to keep myself from bleeding out. My corpsman comes to because he was so close that he kind of got dazed out. So he comes running over, helps me out. Another buddy comes running over, and as they're finishing putting up this tourniquets, my little first sentence to my buddy was, I can't ride my motorcycle when I get home. That was the only thing on my mind. That's how out of touch I was with what was going on. I was just pissed that I could not ride when I got home.
Way worried on that. Yeah.
And so, you know, we got over, so they're patching me up, and then I go and, you know, I kind of sit back a little bit to try to catch my breath again. And that's when I saw TJ, and again, I'm not going to go into that so much, but
do that. No.
But you know, I could tell that he was in pretty bad shape. So it was probably only about 20 minutes later the helo came in, but of course in that scenario it feels like a freaking eternity. They got us onto the helo, they shoved some medicine, and I remember having these really crazy hallucinations, and then I woke up in the hospital. The doctor kind of told me what had happened just to confirm that I was tracking with what was going on. He let me know that TJ had passed away, but Brad was still awake, you know, and the other people that had gotten injured too, that got healed out of there, that they were all doing fine too. So yeah. So it was, like I said, from there it was about five or 6 days from Afghanistan to San Diego. I mean, they really made sure we got home in a timely manner.
Now, how are you taken care of during that transportation? 5 days. I mean, your legs are literally blown off at this point.
Yeah.
Like how are they? Are they maintaining you like kind of like in like an ambulance kind of like area kind of thing? Like how is it set up to how they are transporting you for like 5 days straight? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I mean, they've got, as sad as it is to say, they have planes designed for high casualties like this because
I don't know that.
So so they got like the C-17s. They have ones that have like, you can put litters in the middle that have stations set up for if somebody's going critical while they're on a flight. But you know, I will stop. Like I stopped in Germany. I had a couple surgeries, and they flew me over to the East Coast to Walter Reed. Had a few surgeries there, and then so it was just kind of like surgery, make sure I was stable, fly me here. Surgery, make sure I was stable, fly me here. And then they finished my surgeries off in Balboa, and that's where I kind of did the bulk of my recovery.
With the surgeries, were they more concerned about any type of infection? Were they worried about the scraping and nonstop going with the skin, that, you know, worried about having to chop more as they're going and kind of stuff?
Yeah. I mean, that's always a concern, especially when you have such a catastrophic wound as that. You know, it's not only is it exposed, but especially in a blast like that, all of a sudden all this foreign object is shoved into your body. Like they didn't even want to put me in an MRI machine because they weren't sure what would get yanked out of me. And even to this day, I get hesitant. I know I probably got a few pebbles still lying around in there.
Absolutely.
Now, how did you come to accept that this happened?
You know, it took a while. And Mike, I'm sure you could probably attest to this. When something like that happens, your first thought is like, what's my life going to be like now? You know what I mean? Like I became this fully functional war fighter to all of a sudden, you know, lack of a better term, you know, I'm a cripple, and I don't know how to cope with that, especially on, I don't know, on the woman front, you're like, okay, no one's going to want to date me. Very quickly found out that is not the case.
Totally not the case.
Chicks love scars,
Yeah, I met mine 5 months after my amputation myself, so it doesn't matter. It's a myth.
I mean, I met my wife well after I got injured, so it's small pecker or not, chicks dig scars.
Yeah, that's right.
But no, it was tough. I would say, going through physical therapy, the physical aspect was tough. Learning how to walk is no easy feat, but it's the mental aspect of what am I going to do now? And especially after I got out of physical therapy and everything like that, and I was out on my own, that's when I kind of hit my lowest point. And that was when I was, depressed and really trying to figure who I was going to be from now on.
Well, when you were at home recovering after you did your rehab and all of the stuff they make you do throughout that time.
Yeah.
What is your pain levels like? Because obviously walking around, for people that don't know, as an amputee, you're literally walking on the end of a limb.
Mm-hmm.
So you're putting a lot of pressure on that said limb, and he just had his legs literally blown off. So there's going to be pain levels for any amputee, let alone, someone that's going through a double amputation too. So what are your pain levels at that time when you were saying, it was hard for you during those moments? Were your pain levels extremely high?
Yeah. So, well, and especially in the beginning, your body's still trying to get used to supporting weight at that part of, where it's not designed to support weight there.
Right.
And so, over time it calluses up and you get used to the pain. At this point, I would say there's no comfortable day in my legs.
Right.
Yeah.
You're just nonstop. You just accept it.
Exactly.
You just go, this is how it feels, and that's okay. The
Yep.
definition of pain has changed for at least myself over the course of time, and I'm sure it did for you as well.
Yep. 100%.
How did the Marine Corps treat you?
Oh, I mean, there's a joke in there that they want to treat you like a caged pit bull, so when they let you loose, you go out and attack. But there might be some truth to that. I'm not going to sit here and say like the Marine, that we get pampered, because we don't. Like, at the end of the day, they want us to be efficient warfighters. You can't do that if you're sitting in a 5-star hotel every single day. But right. I will say, I'm glad I joined the Marine Corps. I'm glad that I got to spend it with the guys that I was with, because that's ultimately what made my experience was the people to the left and right of me.
After this happened, did you ever think about wanting to stay in the military, or they wouldn't let you?
No, they offered. And they said, they try to tell me I could be in the infantry, but I know better than that. I'm not going to be out there patrolling anymore. I'm going to be stuck behind a desk, and they would have accommodated me if I wanted to stay in, but I knew I wouldn't have been able to do what I wanted. So in my mind, it was better for me to get out and kind of pursue whatever I wanted to after the fact.
Mm-hmm. I think that's probably best for your mental health as well. You know what I mean? Like, because if you're staring at something that, like, man, this is the job I used to do, but I'm sitting over here now. This is what I want to do, but I can't.
Yeah.
Exactly. That would be hard. It would be hard to see that daily.
Yeah. No, that's exactly right.
How did they take care of you after you left the service?
Oh, I mean, they did. They do. If you're talking about the VA, they're hit or miss, but they do what they can. You know what I mean? I'll never talk bad about the people on the ground floor, because 90% of the people that I see, like the doctors and everything like that, the nurses, they do care. They want to help you out. It's none of their decisions that are causing the friction. So at the VA and when it comes to disability and all that stuff, they take pretty good care of me. It could be a lot worse, but as with everything, especially when it comes to the government, there's always ways that it can be improved.
Mm-hmm. How did they prepare you mentally for leaving the service?
I would say I got pretty lucky on that front, because of getting injured. When you get injured, you get sent to like a Wounded Warrior Battalion, not to be confused with the Wounded Warrior Project.
Oh wow!
So you get sent to the Wounded Warrior Battalion, which is essentially that's where you go through your physical therapy. That's where they're basically helping you get ready to get out. or at least move on to the next stage of your life, whether that's getting out or if you want to stay in. But it's kind of like I would call it kind of like the Weenie Hut Junior of the Marine Corps. Like, it's not as strict, you still have to check in, but you're not PTing every single day. You're not going out to the ranges anymore. Your whole goal is to get out. So I had a year, I had 12 months to a year, or 12 months to a year, 11 months, 12 months to kind of get ready for it. Whereas a lot of guys who are still in until they get their DD 214, their exit documents, and they're out, it's kind of like, well, hey, you're done. See you later. You know what I mean? So for me, it was a different experience. But even with that, it was still tough. It was still tough getting out knowing that was the end of it.
How did you have to prepare yourself mentally for civilian life again?
You know what? I didn't know how to. I thought I had it figured out, but like I said earlier, as soon as I got out, I just completely fell off a cliff. I really struggled to kind of find my footing after that. No pun intended. But you can try to plan for it and everything like that, but just the mentality is so different compared to being in the Marine Corps, and you're always charging forward, and then next thing you know, you're kind of just in limbo. And that's the best way I can explain it.
How fast or did you think about it while you were injured that you wanted to get on that motorcycle?
Oh, all the time. All the time. I thought I was going to be on two wheels before I even got out of physical therapy. And it took a little bit longer than that. But man, that was the one thing that is like, I'm gonna get back on two wheels. And I honestly can say that that's what kept me going through the tough times.
That's what all my doctors tell me. I was all crazy. They're like, you care more about getting back on two wheels than walking again. They're like, get your priorities straight, man. And I'm like, I don't care, man. I'd rather be on a motorcycle than walk.
Yeah, I don't think my priorities could be any straighter at that point.
Yeah, I think I'm dialed in. I think I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have to explain it to you guys, but being on a bike, it doesn't matter if you're missing. You don't need your legs to be on a bike. You know what I mean? Maybe to shift, but once you're cruising, you're cruising.
That's right.
What modifications did you have to do to your motorcycle?
So I had a road glide, of course, like a big freaking bagger. That was like, I thought, hey, that would be a great bike for me to have, not knowing what it'd be like to be, a double amputee on a motorcycle.
A 900-pound bike, no big deal.
Yeah, no big deal.
Whatever.
So, no, I ended up I have a push button shifter. Back then I also had both of my brakes up on the bars. So it'd be, you'd have one, and then the front brake would be on the top, the rear brake would be on the bottom. And it'd be kind of canted. And then the push button, I have a Clictronic system in mine. There's also Pingle shifter. I've used both of them, both great systems. I've never had one fail on me in the last 10 years I've been riding. Wow. Being I guess 8 years being a double amputee of riding. I also have in my bike now, I have a Slim now, and that one's a lot more easier for me to control. Back then I actually had to have a special leg to help support the weight of the road glide. Now I can just kind of use my regular walking leg. But who modified it for you? So the Slim that I have now, it's a organization out in California called Warfighter Made, and they knew that I loved riding. Before that, I had friends in the Joshua Chamberlain Society here in St. Louis, and they helped me get the road glide set up. But I mean, I was headed to school at the time. Some guy decided McDonald's was more important. He cut across my lane. I ended up hitting the side of his car, totaled the Slim because I had not downgraded, but I had switched from the road glide to the Slim. 2 months later, totaled that bike. And then my buddy Rob at Warfighter Made, he's like, hey man, 6 weeks, like I literally, like at no time at all, he's like, hey man, I know you want to get back on two wheels, so we're going to help you out. And I'm surprised because like 5 weeks before this or after this happened was my wedding. And in my wife's wedding vows, she swore she would never make me give up riding.
Oh,
wow.
Yeah. And I literally just like hit the side of a car and like flew 200 feet past it. You know what I mean? So it's like, I had pins in my hand. I don't know if you can see the scar, but yeah, I had pins in my hand. Luckily, I know I joke away. I said I could have walked away if it wasn't for the fact that my leg was broken.
Like,
but it's all right because I went home that night and I switched out my leg and I was good as new, you know.
Hey, I did total a bike while I was amputated too, but luckily I didn't break my leg. You know what I mean? I was actually able to walk away from that, which is a blessing. You know what I mean? Anytime you can walk away from any accident, it's a blessing.
Oh, 100%.
Well, you finally got back able to ride, and you got introduced to the Combat Vets Motorcycle Association. How was that journey for you?
It was good. It was really good. Like I said, I was riding out in California, and I had a group of guys out there, but you know, for the most part, especially before I moved back to Illinois, I was just kind of content being on my own. And I had a family and everything like that, so I couldn't really dedicate as much time as I used to be able to on two wheels. And so, like I said, when I got back here to Illinois, and my dad was like, "Hey, let's go check out this group." It was right up my alley. It was a bunch of like-minded people who they enjoyed riding. There was no, we have our requirements to be in, but it's not, there's not. You can still kind of live your own life outside of that fact. And with my schedule, especially these days, it's cool to just be able to get together whenever you can.
Did you find other vets that were in a similar situation as you in the Combat Vets?
Yeah. So maybe not on the physical aspect, but we got guys from who have seen way more than me, who have seen maybe not as much as me, but it doesn't matter.
You're very right about that, because you can't compare mindsets, and you can't compare one injury to another. There's no way you can do that. You never know how much it hurt that person. You know what I mean? Exactly. So that's where people get complicated. They're like, "Oh, well, you had it worse." It's like, well, you don't know. Maybe you had it worse because you mentally couldn't. It was hard for you during that time. You have no idea how it affected somebody.
Yeah. Now, I will say I've had people come up to me, not in the CVMA, but just throughout life, and like, "Yeah, I broke my leg one time." I'm like, "Well, it's not quite the same thing." It's like, yeah, I get it. But that being said, like, I don't compare either, because, I watched my mom. She had cancer before she passed away, and I don't know what that's like. You know what I mean? I'm not going to say that I had it worse than her, because I didn't. You know what I mean? But everybody has their own experiences of what hardship are, and at the end of the day, as long as you're just there for each other, and that's what we do into Combat Vets. Is if someone's having a rough day, it doesn't matter what's causing that rough day. We're there for each other.
Well, one of my last questions would be, how did the Combat Vets help bring you or bring your mental health to a better place? Did they help uplift you where they tried to get the depression out?
Yeah. So, I would say that I was in a pretty good place before I even met him. But I mean, as with anybody, you have your ups and downs, and especially whenever the time of the year, June time frame comes around, and that's when I got injured. So that's kind of when I kind of close in a little bit on myself. But just knowing that I had a group of people, even in Illinois, in this small southwestern Illinois town, that there was a group of people that they understood. And whenever I am having those rough days, I know I can reach out to any one of them and just be like, "Hey man, I just need an ear to talk to." And likewise, people come up to me and just like, "I'm having a rough time. I'll go drive over there and we'll just have a beer and we'll talk," or whatever they want to do. And yeah, I mean, it helps keep you in a good place, knowing that you're not going to be let down.
Right. It's true brotherhood, and knowing that your brother's by your side, and knowing that they're there for you. You know what I mean? It could be just sitting in the garage having a beer, like you said. It doesn't have to be extravagant. It doesn't have to be a cross country motorcycle, adventure. It doesn't have to be all that.
Yeah. Although those cross country ones, man, I tell you what, that frees the mind right there.
It definitely does. It definitely does.
I mean, if I'm 500 miles in one day, and I'm feeling I'm on a cloud, you know what I mean? That's the best feeling in the world, is taking some serious miles.
Rock on, man. Well, I know I speak for everybody and appreciate all you've done for us and our country You deserve everything you can get out of life for what you've been through. And I'm glad that you came on the show and gave us a little rundown of, what you've been through, how it is being an amputee, riding a motorcycle. And man, what a hero, man.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it. Thank
Definitely a hero. And he's still here to be on two wheels, enjoy himself. And look, he's on the show. And, I wanted to touch on this last before we let him go. Steve asked, is it helpful to meet other amputees and others with similar stories?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And Mike, I'm sure you can attest too. Whenever there's been a couple times you go to, like, I'll go to a motorcycle meet and you'll see some guy who's missing a leg or something like that. Yep. And you'll be like, hey, you crippled, whatever. Yeah. And they'll look over all pissed at you. And then they see you're missing a leg. And it's just like this automatic, like, hey,
my automatic go-to thing is, oh, you got leg problems?
Yeah.
I just go, you got leg problems too, huh? Yeah. And then but I always wear shorts, so it's automatic. They look down and they know. Yeah. But I will answer as well, Steve. It actually propelled me doing to what I'm doing now. Is the big reason for what I do is because of what I want to be able to leave behind, to be able to show that you can still live a meaningful, fulfilling life after something so traumatic, after something so rough. And so when I did do this, with the help and support of all my people, then finding other people that have also gone through some as hardcore or whatever you want to call it, something very similar to you, something that you can relate to. It's amazing to be able to talk to them because they actually know that feeling. It's different to try to understand, because that's what we all want to do, is we all want to try to understand, but it's really hard to relate to something that you don't relate to. Right. So of course it's going to help big time, talking to people that, can relate.
Yeah. Yeah. You hit it right on the head there.
Well, I appreciate having you on, Carbon, and much love and all that to you and everybody else that has served. And hopefully you go on a good journey in your life and keep your head up and keep kicking ass for us.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me on, guys. It's a good time.
No, thank you for coming on, man.
Appreciate it.
Well, we'll talk to y'all tomorrow on the Madhouse Show. We'll be there at 8:15 Central Standard Time for some laughs and all that good stuff. I'll be picking on China Doll as usual. We'll talk to you guys all later, Rock. And that's it for a Motorcycle Madhouse Morning Mayhem. Don't forget to visit us on Spotify, Apple, iTunes, and all major podcast platforms for all the replays of Motorcycle Madhouse shows.